I was about to summon you from the pits of hell again, but I decided to not because you did it to me last time. But then
we can't do the same.
No, it's too late. I guess we're starting this now. That's our cold start. Hello, well, welcome to the Dungeon Crawler. You going crazy yet, Ryan?
A little bit, getting a little stir crazy.
Well, you just got some food.
Yeah,
you're going out.
I mean, takeout.
You got your friend over. You're doing things.
Yeah, masked up, gloved up.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, I got it from the hospital.
Oh, I can't get any masks. So probably have something they can use to cover my face.
I hope no one from the hospital hears this because I'm not supposed to take it. But if anyone is, I left it in my pocket by accident.
Yeah, well, then that's not a good mask to use if it's been sitting in your pocket. What if
I
there's
cleaned
scary things in there, man?
Like what? What's in my pocket, man?
I don't know.
What are you saying about me? You saying my pockets aren't clean?
Maybe you're saying it's a mask in your pocket, or maybe you're saying you're just happy to see me.
Oh, I'm pretty happy to see you.
Well, we're not seeing each other. Okay. Well, there's some pretty mature things that go on in this world, Ryan. You know,
you
gotta be careful, because some of it might ruin your entire season of D&D online stuff.
Yeah, might ruin your game, your friendships, your week, your session.
We've talked about session zeros and talking to your players about expectations and things to avoid. Well,
very important to have.
There have been some people out there in the world lately that haven't listened to the Dungeon Crawl. Let me tell you,
they're missing out. It's a great.
They
podcast.
Are missing out. It's a good podcast. I like it. I listen to it sometimes. Not so much lately. Weirdly enough, I'm not listening to podcasts during this whole thing, which is very, very peculiar to me. I thought I would have more time.
Oh, never mind. I was gonna say,
I don't commute anymore.
Yeah, I was saying on the way to work, but you move over to your desk.
Yeah, pretty much. But there was a recent event over the past, was it this week or last week?
Well, it's the event, the specific session video was 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
And I just recently responded to it.
Okay.
Which
it's good to take some time.
Took a long time.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know what I would do in that situation. Well, first off,
what are we talking about?
Mature themes in games.
That is.
There's a touchy subject, my friend.
Yeah, everyone has a different line.
But we've got notes in front of us, and thinking about this, I have a lot of complications that come across. Because on one end, I think that D&D should be a safe place. It always should be. I'm not going to be contradicting that with my next statement, but art with restrictions, some people don't think is art at all.
I mean, I can understand that too.
Yes. But there are also things in this world that's like, hey, did you need to use that?
There's some really intense films that exist.
Yeah.
I can't think of one.
Should those not be things anymore?
Well, I'm just trying to, I can't think of one off the top of my head, but there's a really intense Ukraine film that is just, depicts some terrible things. And it shows everything. There's one called 70 Days in Sodom, I think, something like that. Another really, just thinking of the title, intense, graphic stuff. Is that is that art? Some would say, yeah.
It's somebody's art.
Yeah, it's somebody's art, I guess, someone's dream. And you could argue, yeah, that the themes that they're going for, there's a larger message. Some people just don't care. They don't want to see that in their screen.
Yeah. There's a lot of things like that for me. It doesn't mean I think they should be expelled from existent. Well, actually, no. This is such a sticky subject. Yeah, shitty things shouldn't happen to people. Flat out. Also, certain topics may come up during this. I don't know what is okay for me and Ryan to say right now, but if there's anything that you're worried about possibly overhearing when talking about mature themes in games, be careful. Just want to make sure everybody's aware of what's going on.
Yeah.
Covering our bases while we're talking about this.
We'll be tactful. We'll be polite, but just in case. So,
talking about art and movies and just people's nature in general, there are humans out there who have done shitty things. And to not portray that in art sometimes, to paint the world as a prettier picture than it actually is, sometimes seems like it's being false. But it's such a weird balancing act, as you've brought up when we talked about this. What you're playing D&D to have fun. right?
Yeah, at the end of the day, it's all about having a good time.
Your session 0 rolls around and you're maybe a new DM and you've got some players that are really having a stressful time and maybe something that happened in their life. It could be something simple. It could be something intense. You need to talk to them, like we've mentioned in our session 0 episode way back when. But maybe something happened along the way and you forgot or didn't have a session 0, Ryan. I mean, things fall through the cracks, right?
Yeah, I'm trying to recall exactly what I even said to you and you guys at session 0. I know I had like a handout.
About, like, yeah, you asked us, I remember the sheet pretty well, what sort of theme do you like? Darker, more comedic, more happy? I think that was a big point of it. And other things that were on, I'm not quite sure, but that was the overall largest point of your sheet you gave to us. But I don't think you would consider putting a lot of explicit content in your games already, so I don't think you asked us.
No. I'm pretty sure I did mention stuff. I know for a fact I probably said, like, if there is anything in particular that upsets you or things that you wouldn't want to experience in the game, let me know. I will make sure that doesn't go into the game. It's, though, I was actually talking about this with my girlfriend earlier when I was, writing down my notes and ideas and figuring out what I wanted to say. Let's say you have a group, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And
I have this group.
Yeah, everyone's on the same page except for there's one player that is not okay with certain themes. Does that mean that you guys are not a good fit, or you should tweak what your game is to just satisfy them and everybody? Or go, pull them aside, talk to them about it, figure out what exactly, they don't want to hear, or it's tough.
I think it's where it gets to be a really gray area, because at that point you look at the thing that they're wanting to not interact with. They don't want in their D&D game, and you think whether it's something that you really need or want to put in your story as a DM. And I think from that point of view is when you would maybe judge whether they're a good fit or not, because it could be something simple. Maybe they don't like goblins, like they just hate them because they're boring as hell and they won't play in a game with goblins.
Damn.
And your entire fucking arc in the beginning is goblins.
That's a problem.
That's not a mature theme, but for example, in a session 0, that could come up. Now, maybe something more serious in this person's life has happened and it's a traumatic experience for them and they want nothing to do with it in the session.
Like torture. Or talking about slavery.
Yeah, hell, it's fairly often depicted, now that you bring up slavery, like pirates do those things. There's slave trades. Somebody might not be okay with that. It's a pretty shitty thing that goes on in the real world, and maybe this DM wants to portray a grungy, realistic, maybe a bit more harsh version of the world that you guys see day to day just to experience it.
I mean, Braxton's experienced my game firsthand, and there's been a whole section on slavery that's been very rampant in this current area that the party's at. And they've been experiencing it and learning about it and hearing about it. And I'm not painting it in like this nice, happy, like these are terrible people doing terrible things. And they're experiencing these, and then it leaves up the option for the players to then go out and fix these problems and try to alleviate these slaves and kill the slavers.
That's a topic that you can bring up with this person. That's a really good point. I didn't even actually think about that. But hey, that shows that Ryan's a good DM, I guess. You say, these things may exist in my world. Yes, I recognize that they are either this or that, but I'm not going to force the situation on you.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good way to use mature themes in games. Now, the topic that instigated us choosing this episode, this title, blah, 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 mature themes in games, is there was a situation where a player was forced. I don't know. I wouldn't say forced, but this thing was pretty railroady and it was happening and there was almost no way out of it.
They didn't say, I don't think the players really said a word the whole time.
Everybody was so shocked.
Yeah.
So that, like, on both end, it could have been handled better, but the reason the DM was, I guess, ostracized, I don't know what the word you would use, but he's been very, very critiqued for this thing he did.
Yeah, rightfully so.
He was, there's this, I guess we'll go into detail here, a robot character that experienced something sexual with the mechanic unwillingly. And everybody's face was so confused as to why this was going on. They were so shocked that I don't even think they thought to react to it.
Oh yeah.
So that may happen in your game.
As a DM, it's one of your greatest tools you can ever have in your toolbox of D&D tools is reading the room.
Mm-hmm.
Looking around at your players while you're describing something, while they're talking, RPing, during combat, anytime. Look at their faces, understand how they're feeling. And if you can see someone's not enjoying themselves, try to either shine a spotlight on them or change up what you're doing. Try different tactics. Bring that person back into the hat. Because, like we said, at the end of the day, it's all about having a fun time.
So hopefully it doesn't get to that point. And I guess kind of going back to what if this group just isn't a right fit for your game and vice versa? What if everybody just said, yeah, let's just play the game. Now we don't need to have session 0 talk about it. Let's just play D&D.
Yeah.
Everybody's okay with it. DM
like
said, no, let's just go.
Let's say they're all good friends. You've known each other for a long time, whatever.
Is the DM still at fault if they cause a disturbance with a mature theme that comes up?
I think not at fault, but I think if no one says anything, then it's kind of like I think also it really depends on what the theme is.
Yeah.
There's some themes that probably just shouldn't get, and if they are brought up, there are some themes that I think have a place and have a threshold on how much it should be presented and described.
Yeah. There's a lot of moments in acting and theater and stories that have to be earned, and especially good ones. You can't just put the main couple together without them going through, the steps in a relationship to get to that one
Some
point.
turmoil.
You want to earn it, or maybe trouble. You want a conflict. But you're right. There's just a lot of things that I don't think, or couldn't even imagine myself writing something and figuring out this masterful work that validates using a certain mature theme that
for example,
really off limits.
I'm sure you can attest to this in acting and movies and things where sexual assault is often used as a way to just immediately portray this guy as the bad guy. This is the villain because they have sexually assaulted somebody. That's of course it's a bad thing, but it's not worth including in your piece of work if it's not earned, as for lack of a better word, as Braxton said. There's no purpose to just including that. It's just there to be there.
Yeah. So that makes me think, in the case that happened over the past couple of weeks, you think about a moment like that as a DM and you reflect and you say, could I have done that moment and gotten the same message across without doing what I did to shock people and hurt somebody?
I think he definitely could have.
He definitely could have.
It could have been handled a lot better. And I think the players would have, I think it probably could have, I think it would have still caused some, people would have had some backlash. But if you're going to be streaming to a large audience, no matter what you talk about, there are going to be some things that people aren't going to like. And I think that's okay. Critical Role has been in the spotlight every so often for stuff that Matt Mercer has brought into their game. Yeah. Like slavery and stuff along those lines. And he's like, I want to make it in a dark and gritty, realistic world.
Yeah. Yeah, there was this one game. I don't know if you played it, Doki Doki Literature Club.
Yes.
Did you play it?
I did, yeah.
Okay, so when it first got released, spoilers, I guess, for anybody that hasn't played it, there was no splash screen or warning when the game first came on. It really did seem like a visual novel, fun, slice of life experience, and it was not. And it did indeed surprise a good amount of people. Now, if you get the game and you download it and you play it, there's this huge content warning splash screen that comes on
even with
before anything happens.
Yeah, even with it, I was like, why is this here? Obviously, I was aware of something was going to happen at some point, but the intro kind of lasted so long, I was like, I kind of forgot about it.
Yeah. So mature themes in games specifically, it doesn't have to be just within D&D. People do need a warning because there are situations out there that could really harm somebody or even hospitalize them if they experience something like that again. So I think it's needed, but do you think it ruins the experience at all if it's something that isn't absolutely appalling? Like it's just shock, like slavery.
Yeah.
Do you think it really ruins the experience, or is a spoiler if there's that content warning?
No, I don't think so. I think if you as a DM are okay with using these certain themes, then be upfront at the beginning of the game. Say, okay, I plan on using, not plan on, I have parts of my world or the story may lead into these certain themes. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Are you all right with this? And
So
if they say yes, then obviously you're okay. If not, then I'd say either talk to them or tweak your story, whatever.
well, at that point, I mean, are you bringing everything up, or is there an issue too small to validate bringing it forth into the light?
Yeah, that's
Do
another.
you have to check everything?
Yeah, it's another tough. What warrants being talked about?
Yeah,
I have it in our notes here. Profanity.
you fucking love that shit, man.
Yeah, Braxton fucking loves that shit, but not everyone does.
No,
Is that worth bringing up and talking
Yeah.
about it?
it's such a
maybe.
tough thing to dance around. I mean, balancing act is the top of our notes here. Things are so gray with this, Ryan. They really, really are. And it just comes into question, where do you draw the line? Do you have an idea? Like, for you specifically, what's something that's so small you wouldn't really bring up? Or is that even a question I should ask you?
I wouldn't bring up profanity.
Yeah.
Let's see. What else? I wouldn't bring up. I mean, things that I classify as mature themes, I would bring up, but I'm sure everyone has different. Like sexual content.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily a dark, mature theme, but if someone, is there going to be romance and sex in my game? If the players, I mean, I'm not going to describe it, but
Yeah.
if the player wants to, have a happy ending, I'll let them pursue that. I'm not going to describe, I'm not gonna, make you roll for how good you did.
Yeah. You could, though, as long as
could.
the player was okay with it.
And another one being drug use.
Yeah, that's a big one.
All right, is drugs going to be in your game? If you're trying to do a realistic world, that probably will be. Most worlds have some sort of drug. And how deep do you want to get into that? You want to describe the intense withdrawals. You want to, there's lots of things that can come and go from all the death. You want to delve on dark death themes.
Are potions
I know
drugs?
we have. I guess technically.
Damn, maybe there's a potion addiction in your game.
Yeah.
I mean, there's probably a lot of potions. That's off topic. I like thinking about that.
Well, I mean,
though.
like, my players have learned that I like kind of delving into these topics, and I think they can be good for people to work through. Like, we've had super intense sessions about dealing with someone's death and working through that with a close loved one of the individual who died, and the consequences.
Something that just came to mind is the whole idea of give your players the power. Let them explore your world the same way that you don't try to railroad them into making a decision.
Yeah,
you've got a great quest that you want them to go down, but I think the same thing you can do if you want to use mature themes and you haven't gotten the chance to talk to your players. It's just a crappy situation you didn't get to. Foreshadowing and dropping hints. Test the waters, see the reaction, allow the players themselves to choose, okay, that's a thing that I don't want to experience in D&D right now because this is my place to escape and stay safe. I'm not going to pursue that. And you as a DM should be able to pick up on that cue. If they don't explore it, move on.
Yeah.
There are ways to test the waters, so to speak, while in the session.
I agree with that.
But there's a literal way to check it. And I think, Ryan, you know a lot more about this idea or tool than I do. I had no idea what this was before I Googled it.
Yeah, so I'd heard about this a while ago. And again, when this person in question that we were talking about, the DM decided from now on they're going to implement this in his games, is something called the X card. It kind of came into popularity probably about 5 years ago or so. There was a little bit of a controversy around it, whether it's worth being used, whether should it be used. And a quick little summary of what it is there's basically the way that I've seen most X cards is one side, it's a piece of paper. Let's say you're playing in person. is a piece of paper. One side has an X on it. The other side has a circle, sometimes with a smiley face inside of it. If there's a certain theme or a certain something that is happening in the game, maybe something's taking too long. It doesn't have to even be something that you're offended by. Just something's taking too long, or just kind of a polite way of saying, let's move on, is just hold up the X part of the card, which basically tells the DM and everyone else, okay, whatever's happening, this player is not necessarily unhappy with, but decides they don't want to be a part of this scene. Let's move it along. And so as a DM, I would try to wrap up what's going on, or at least tweak what I'm saying.
So do these people have to explain why they use it?
No, I think people will feel obligated to. They'll probably be questioned. People will be like, okay, why? Especially if, let's say, Braxton, you're being a player and you're maybe saying something that you think is funny, but one of the players doesn't, and so they raise the X part of their card. Then I understandably so, the player was speaking during that time would probably feel a little annoyed, a little upset, offended. And hopefully at the end they would be kind of understand, okay, maybe I did say something stupid.
Yeah. What if it's maybe not so much of a serious situation, but just like they hate my humor, or they're genuinely annoyed at just something I've chosen to do in the game that isn't objectively wrong.
Yeah.
That's a whole different, like, objectivity is fucking crazy. But what if it disrupts the
just
game? Yeah.
Like they start arguing about it right there?
Well, maybe not arguing about it. No, I mean, I think it would disrupt the game a lot. I think it's a good idea, but say I'm like, nothing particularly bad is happening, but a player holds up their card.
Yeah.
They really don't want to explain why, but nobody has any idea what could have happened.
Okay.
And then the entire game becomes all of the players in game asking, like, hey, what's going on? What's wrong? Why can't I do this? And then the player who pulled the X up is starting to get frustrated because they don't want to explain out of the game or in the game why they're using it. I feel like it could bring up a lot of issues, and it's sort of a handicap for people that can't read the room.
Yeah, I think it has a place in certain groups. There's a quote that I saw that I did add to our notes that say, some person said that people will regret not using the X card. They don't regret using it, because you never have to use it. But if you aren't using it and something does come up, then it's already too late.
That's a good point.
If, for example, with this certain situation, if they had an X card implemented, I'm curious how that would have changed the scene. I don't know if it would have. I don't know how he could have gotten out of that. Now, since he was already so knee deep.
Well, you could have definitely. How I would have handled that if an X card was implemented, you see that. Hopefully, you are able to locate what the issue is.
Yeah, what's going on,
and then have the NPC in question reel back and maybe say, "Oh, I shouldn't have done that." Literally.
Sure. Yeah.
There are ways to kind of get out of it, I think, and he still would have been in trouble, but at least it wouldn't have happened.
Yeah, there would have been a way for the players to more or less protect themselves.
Now, if they tried to get back together, which I don't think is going to happen, I think the X card might be a good kind of last resort, like a DM probation. Hey, we're going to use these so that you know clearly when we're uncomfortable with
where
something
the lines
until
are.
You get better at telling.
But then on the flip side of the X card is this happy face or the circle, and that's supposed to be raised whenever something good is happening that you're enjoying. And so then as a DM, you're like, okay, this guy is enjoying this puzzle that I created. Let's have more puzzles in the game.
What if I'm just kind of neutral? Is there like a meh face?
Don't touch it.
But
don't you put your hand on that piece of paper.
But it's going to be default to up. What if I'm like, I don't hate this thing.
Well, no, you're only supposed to raise it whenever, or touch it, put your hand on it whenever you're feeling a certain way.
Yeah. Understood. Okay. I think it's a cool idea. I mean, there are ways it could be implemented without disrupting gameplay. I think you could probably place limitations on the usage of an X card.
Yeah.
But then again, you start opening up the conversation to things people might not want to talk about, and then maybe it gets a bit redundant there. It's supposed to be this anonymous thing.
And again, talk about it in session 0. See if it's good for your group, and maybe if it's not, say, okay, well, if there's ever a time you guys are feeling uncomfortable, then we can implement this later, at a later date.
Yeah. So you use the X card. Maybe it's a good thing for your group, maybe it's not. But Ryan, in your specific case, do you think there's, to my recollection, I can't think of a moment in our games where reading the room really, really needed to happen, but maybe you just dealt with it well? Has there ever been a situation where you've DM'd, or maybe something else you've seen that kind of talks about mature themes in games, something that you had to deal with personally?
No, I think I've been blessed with not necessarily good players, but also with
people that have the same sort of acceptances for storytelling that you do,
that are okay with broaching and touching on some dark topics. Granted, I'm not like, just because of the person I am, I'm not, it's really diving into some really intense stuff. And if I do, I'm not gonna describe every single detail.
Yeah, I mean,
like, if there's someone being tortured, I'm not gonna describe every little bit of information. I'm going to say this person, is obviously not having a good time.
Well, you definitely could have, because we ended up burning one of the caravans on accident.
Yes, I basically just said that you hear the screams, and kind of leave the rest up to the imagination of each individual player, how much they want to see themselves.
Yeah, you can go into it if you want. It's so interesting because a DM, if they want to be the kind of neutral, objective experience that the world's giving them, I think what you do is pretty great. You're a voice and sound box. You're really just the eyes and ears of the person, unless you're an NPC, where if a character had decided to walk up and into that caravan, you would have described what's happening.
Right.
Rather than forcing it, like really, really going out of your way to describe this explicit content, going back to putting it in the player's hands. It's their choice whether they experience this thing. Much like it is in real life, though.
Yeah, well, I think the big takeaway is just don't force anybody into these situations.
Yeah.
Don't railroad them. If you are putting them into this tough situation, for example, the one that brought up this whole topic, he ended the game right there.
Oh my God.
If he had continued, it probably still would have been bad, but the players could have salvaged it in some way. She could have called for help. They could have brought in, had a fight, and killed the guy, made them, at least themselves and the audience, say this is something bad. This is not good. Obviously, this guy was a bad person. But ending it right in that moment is, again, almost like a form of railroading, because that's the end of that scene. It's over. It's done.
Some of the things he said, justifying like why he ended it there. I don't.
Yeah.
Ooh, boy.
I don't think
I was blown away.
Yeah. I don't know.
And it was specifically, if you know you're dealing with mature themes in whatever content you're creating, and there's a live audience or a player base that you are doing this for, make sure that you yourself aren't laughing.
Yeah.
Just give the content, if you have to use it and there's consent, give it the respect that it needs.
Exactly.
Don't be a dickwad and laugh at the situation either out of discomfort or trying to figure out what the hell is going on. But something I wanted to talk about specifically for people out there that feel this is a path for them to face their demons, so to speak, in acting and theater, using your past experiences to fuel a performance, I think is a really tough skill to master. Not one that is a necessity for any actor or anybody performing. It takes a lot of bravery, but it can be therapeutic for you to challenge some mature content or something that you find disturbing to yourself. Now, this doesn't mean I'm recommending that you should, or that this is something that everybody needs to do, because some things out there, like maybe describing a horribly brutal death, that's not really a demon for somebody to face. That's just maybe a really disgusting description. But if there's an event in your life that you find to be traumatic and you're ready and willing to open up to it, you can maybe even talk to your DM. And it doesn't have to be something that was traumatic in your life. Maybe you're going through a life change and there's something that you're coming to terms with personally. You can use these mature themes or just touchy subjects as a coping mechanism, or maybe a little therapy session.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, Ryan knows a lot more about therapy than I am, and I don't want to say that I'm a licensed therapist and he isn't yet. So So I'm not giving medical advice, but if you are feeling like you could challenge your demons in this way, tell your demon maybe he can write you a story to try to cope with it.
Yeah, it's definitely, and we've talked this plenty of times, D&D is a fantastic way to work through stuff. We've told stories from our own games where players have worked through something that's going on in their life during the game, and you kind of see it on their face, like, oh, this is no longer about the game, this is about what's happening to me. And it's a very cool and I think powerful moment for a player to work through. Not even and me as a DM, I'll incorporate stories and themes of my own life, and not necessarily I can work through them, but I can present them and see how they react to them and respond to them.
I wonder if you've done this?
Yeah, I do it all the time.
I wonder which stories. Is there anything you could share?
I can't think off the top of my head because I've been away from D&D
not.
for like 5 weeks now.
Oh my god, I can't believe it's been that long.
I know. We're finally gonna play again, thankfully.
For a little bit.
Yeah,
I think since we've been going without it for so long, everybody's settled into a new schedule.
Yeah.
Whereas we were consistently doing it over and over. So everybody's like, okay, this is D&D time.
We're gonna get back on the sketch.
Yeah. I miss it a lot. Because I mean D&D is escapism. That's a scary thing for me, honestly, to think about, because everybody has a different reason why they play D&D, whether it's to be able to explore mature themes in this setting because they don't get to have enough excitement in their real life, or they're just here to have a casual, fun time. In some way, people using D&D as escapism, does that affect other players and how they enjoy the game? That's where session 0 comes in, and you try to make sure that your goals for playing D&D or your interests align with other people. But there's two sides to you facing your demons and braving things head on and not wanting to deal with that stuff at all.
Yeah.
Really, the session 0 is very important, guys.
Yeah, go back and listen to our session 0 episode.
It's probably terrible.
Probably, but I'm sure some good information in there at the very least.
Yeah.
A lot of this can be avoided from a good session 0.
Yeah, that's why whenever we talk about something in this subject matter, and session 0 is an option, I feel like I'm always just ending all of my statements in, if you had a session 0, maybe
it wouldn't have
a little spice, wouldn't it?
But if let's say you add a player in halfway through, you don't really have a session 0. Should you have a second session 0 with this player? Maybe.
If you structure your session zeros, so if somebody does come in, you can give them the same piece of paper.
Yeah, at least just hand them the handout.
Unless your game's been going on for like 6 years, then you have a new session 0. Refresh it. Make sure everybody's like in the same spot.
Yeah.
But really, mature themes, I think it's a waste to not explore some of them. But obviously, like we've said, some just aren't even warranted being used in a story, especially if you're just going for shock factor. Mm-hmm. Now, I mean, Ryan, when you're writing a story, do you ever really go for shock factor? Or is there a time that you want to just say, I really feel like in this moment, I want the players to be overwhelmed with surprise?
I think, yes, I do go for shock value, but not when it comes to those sort of themes. It's more so shock is like a twist, a surprise, something they weren't expecting. If you specifically do brutal violence or sexual assault or torture, anything as that's meant to be your shock value and get your players invested, I don't think that's going to go over well, no matter who you're playing with. Treat these themes with the respect that they deserve. Mm-hmm. And I don't think there will be any problems if you treat them with this care and this respect.
You're a seasoned writer, and I'm sure there's a lot of situations that you've written or tossed. Have you ever come across a moment where you considered using a mature theme and you turned it down?
Well, I think to me, there have been a lot of mature themes that have been touched upon, even if the party or, the audience isn't aware of it. Like, for example, a lot of times it comes back to sexual assault as being, one of these big themes people don't want to talk about. And if you think about it if you ever know anybody or have gone through something as terrible like that yourself, you don't want to talk about it with people. You don't want to open up, but it still affects you and the decisions that you make. So if those have happened to an NPC or something in my game, I'm not going to talk about it with the party. I'm not going to talk about it with the players. But it has happened, and maybe there's a reason that they hate this NPC so much, but they don't want to talk about it. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, it's just like real life. We all have
Exactly.
friends that have their own experiences, and you may not know something about your best friend of 10 years just because they haven't wanted to explain it. And this continues with the theme of let your players explore and experience the world as if it was a real one. Especially if you go into detail and write your NPCs with backstories that have a mature theme or a sexual assault. The main villain in your story, Ryan touched on earlier, you never really want to just look for the most evil act and say that your villain has done that just to make them established as an evil character.
Yeah.
But a more tactful way, if you just really want to use it, is to leave it in there hidden. And imagine you go through this entire backstory of a villain, and you've been hunting him down, and it's been like a 2-year-long session, and it's like opening up a lore book on something, and you find a little bit of information at a time, like he's done this, he's destroyed this village. Some say he killed people in this way or that way, and a player discovers that on their own. It can be weird because you, the DM yourself, are imparting this information on it. You wrote it, so you're still presenting it to them. But again, it goes onto that dropping hints thing. That's really important. And that is something I'd like to talk about, because you can do the Doki Doki Literature Club route and just splash it on the screen and say, hey, explicit content. Or you can do the same thing with creative writing and give them warnings in game, just like you would if, this one time Ryan and I talked about difficulty levels and danger levels. And then this session that we had, there were these orangutans or something that could have murked the shit out of us.
100%.
But he was dropping hints. So he didn't just drop murderous orangutans on us and have our party die and say, hey, well, you should have learned, or you should have known it was coming, even though there was no warning about it. That's probably the best analogy I could have for it, honestly.
And a lot of it goes back to also how your world is, how realistic you want it to be. Do you want it to be just a fun, happy-go-lucky, stereotypical fantasy world where there's these cut and dry, black and white bad people? Or do you want to make it a little more realistic and put more time into crafting these backstories and these characters that have wants and wills, and not everything is as happy as it may seem?
Yeah. So I think at this point, really, if you're going to consider doing this, talk with your players is always the biggest solution, and give them a warning. But I don't know if there's much else for us to cover.
Well, I do have one last thing here to ask you, Braxton. And we can
I'm really
delve
great at
into
answering questions.
You're fantastic. NPCs. How many times have you ever heard the phrase, yada, yada, some terrible thing comes out of someone's mouth while they're doing something, and they say, oh, I'm just roleplaying, I'm just acting. That's just a character.
Oh, my God.
Say you're playing a game, and then the DM is being an NPC, not quote unquote not being themselves, but then just starts dropping all sorts of language that you think is offensive and not worth, not should be used, and are being overtly sexual or things that are making you uncomfortable. Then the DM is saying, it wasn't me, it's the NPC that's doing this stuff. I'm in character right now.
So first off, that's a talk that you just need to have with your DM if that goes on, and say,
or even if your player, let's say the player is role playing like that.
I've seen horror stories on Reddit all the time. There's this one thread about some DM who had a player that always wanted to play a naked fox furry. Always. Okay. Every game they played in. No matter what happened, you could not convince him otherwise. Ever. to stop doing this. And in a sense, it's kind of similar. I mean, get that out of your game if a player's doing that, truly, because people, whether you're acting or not, if you're a method actor or whatever the hell you do, you're still you.
It doesn't excuse you being saying an asshole.
This. It doesn't excuse you at all. Yes, if you maybe write a book and it exists and it sits there and somebody can read it on their own, maybe it's okay. But if you're playing a live game, live content, and doing that in front of somebody's face and they're uncomfortable with it, man, you need to stop.
Yeah.
Please. Who boy. NPCs aren't a scapegoat.
Yeah, I have a few NPCs that are definitely have made the party a little uncomfortable here and there, but it's not like I'm being over the top with it. I'm not crossing any lines. Even if this NPC is a misogynistic asshole, I'm not going to cross those lines.
It's all about reading your players.
Yeah.
You can tell. People are expressive. Their body language changes. DMs, I implore you to maybe study up on body language and facial expressions and micro expressions. That can give you a load of information during your session, not just to prevent hurting somebody because of mature content that you're using. Maybe something really amazing is going on and there's just like a slight little chipper in somebody, or they've got a little bit of a grin going on, and you can follow that seed down and continue to make it an even greater experience. There are loads of ways to use observance.
And make sure you remember that it's not about you as the DM. It's about everybody having fun. If you're having fun, but they're not having fun, then you're failing as a DM.
You're not being a good DM.
Yeah, it's not a good game. Even if
you
everyone
except
for
story,
one player is having fun.
Yeah.
You got to make sure everyone's having a good time.
It's a rough world out there, man. And really being mindful is the biggest part of it. That's you can answer this with a 20-page essay, or you could say it in simple facts. And you could be on one end of the spectrum, and on the other end, you can be on another end of the spectrum. It's just so gray.
Yeah.
Never do something for the sake of doing it. Never shock somebody just because you want to use something intense. End of story.
Talk with your players.
Yeah.
Boom.
But from my point of view, not specifically with mature themes in games, but I love experiencing emotions that are foreign to me or things I don't get to experience on a daily basis. So if I were in a game, I would be okay with mature themes.
Yeah.
A good bit of them, but just because of how we're raised, sexual content is so weird in video games. Not video games, it's all there all the time. Give me all the jiggle physics in video games. But for D&D, since it's live theater, basically, it's such an intimate experience. And if like sex happens in D&D and your group's not okay with it, I imagine it'd be a really weird experience.
Yeah.
You know?
And even if they are okay with it, but they don't want you to describe it in that, you as the DM starts going into detail, probably something you want to avoid.
Do avoid it. But I mean, Ryan, I got no other thoughts on this. Do a session 0.
Yeah, we've exhausted this, I think, pretty good.
We're both losing our D&D brains just because everything is fucking going on right now. And
yeah,
I hope anybody out there that is kind of in a weird new schedule right now because of whatever state you live in, like for me in Chicago right now, they just moved the stay-at-home order to the 30th of April, but I think they're still going to go past that.
Yeah,
I'm seeing articles about, if you need to start finding a new norm. Really, as somebody who has lived their life happily indoors for the majority of the time, this isn't much different for me. Outside of not being able to see my girlfriend now or my brother being in Texas, usually the time I get to go outside is either when my brother wants to go to, say, a beer place so that we can get some beers or like bacon and shit like that.
Tough men.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't have that aspect, but try to find something new in every opportunity, whether it's in a D&D session where a mature theme is coming up, you're a demon, you've been really excited about this situation, but your player isn't excited about it, you can flip it around. If you're quarantining at home, like Ryan and I are, best you can do is either just be prepared, walk outside, have a little bit of sunlight, get a sandwich. Ryan did that a bit ago. Maybe
listen to a podcast.
Listen to the Dungeon Crawl. Pick up a piece of pen and paper and see if you can't draw. I learned that a second ago.
Drawing some faces.
Just that's it. It's the first thing I've ever actually drawn, like literally. I've never
that's how it starts.
Done anything other than doodle like a line or like a cube, because I was like, hey, you can make 3D things on 2D mediums. This is interesting. So I've been trying to make the best of the situation. I'm sure I'll get cabin fever at some point, but I believe in all of you. You can do this.
You got it.
Live my life.
Hopefully we're nearing the end, but as things always say, it might get worse before it gets better. Find escapes.
At least from where I'm at right now, I think the bell's going to start curving out.
Yeah, thank goodness.
I need my D&D. Man, it's so funny though, because of like, I hope all of your sessions are still going on right now, but we're in the middle of my arc. Okay. I want to experience this.
If Brax wants to be a little selfish here, I get it though. You know,
but by gosh darn it, let me.
Yeah, it's been building up to this moment, and then boom, this happens. I start getting sick, and then everyone's trying their schedules, and
I'm glad
it's a weird time.
Okay though.
Yeah, it's a weird time.
We're exploring a bunch of different topics right now, and I don't think we've exhausted by far everything we can talk about for a D&D podcast.
No, not even.
But I'm hoping, like, Ryan, I want to try like to tackle combat like within the next couple of episodes.
Yeah, we're getting there.
I want to try it.
It's a doozy.
And you've been playing Fire Emblem. I don't know if it's been inspiring you at all.
Yeah, just finished the DLC. Yes, 2 days ago. Good stuff.
Do you still like the character that you like?
Yeah.
Okay. I feel like I'd like Yuri, but I don't know. He has like a clown suit.
He's pretty cool.
Is he cool, or is he a dick? Like a secret dick?
A little bit of both.
God,
he's a cool dick, you know?
Cool dick?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's the off-brand of Cool Whip. So put it on the other side of your body.
I want to, whenever we talk about combat, I want to get your opinions on how you could get more Fire Emblem into D&D.
Okay.
It's not amazing. It's not an amazing battle system, but I enjoy the tactical side of it. But the reason it works so well is because you're one player and you can make all the decisions.
Sure.
And you're fine with
yelling at
taking
your friend.
time. Yeah. Ooh. So I'm predicting in 3 episodes it's a combat time.
Okay. All right. We'll start hammering away at it.
Yeah.
Get some ideas.
We'll get a document open. Hold us to it. If we don't do it in 3 episodes, barring, I don't know what episode we're on right now, but if that's like a 10-digit number, then we're going to do something else. I don't know.
I think we're 38.
Okay,
no,
so
that's too high, right?
I think we're 38.
We're 35. We're 35.
Okay, 38 would be too much. Hoo boy.
I'm not ready for that.
We're not getting that old. We'll have been doing this for almost a year.
Yeah,
soon.
It doesn't feel like it though, does it?
I think in June we started it.
July 30th was our first episode.
We're getting there.
Do we need pants?
Do we need pants? That's a good amount of views.
Still the age-old question.
Maybe that's what we'll title the year episode. Do we need pants? Part 2.
No, the year episode will be the answer to that question.
Either
yes or no.
We do need pants. That's the title.
That'll get people to listen.
Yeah, they'll pop in there. They'll check out the first and the last episode.
Yeah, we got those and then those eye-grabbing titles.
Yeah, sometimes. I'm sure this one will get you.
It better.
Whatever we end up titling.
Thanks for listening. Thanks for finding us.
Thank you for listening, Ryan.
Oh, I'm always happy to listen to you waffle.
I haven't talked to you in like a few days.
Yeah, like a week, I feel like, right?
Yeah, probably since the last podcast.
Yeah, we've both been busy. Which is weird.
Either sick or just tired.
Yeah.
My job ramped up. But that's neither here nor there.
Well, that makes sense.
Yeah. Thanks for listening.
We've been the Dungeon Crawl.
He's a Ryan.
He's a Braxton.
The Dungeon Crawl Pod.
Yep, there he goes.
Hell yeah.
on Twitter and Instagram, and then shoot us an email if we said something stupid or you agree with what we said.
Yeah.
At
Just get an
the
email.
dungeoncrawlpod@gmail.com. Make sure you rate us 5 stars on iTunes and say Braxton is a nincompoop.
That's my job.
Mm-hmm.
Take care.
Take care, guys.